Hello and welcome to Creator Toolbox. This is the show where we, the people on this screen, give you tools for your ServiceNow developer toolbox. And we have a very special guest with us, someone you may recognize. Let's go around and do the introductions.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. Hello, I'm Andrew Barnes. I am a product success manager here at ServiceNow. I've been developing on the platform for over 7 years now. Was at a couple of customers, an implementation partner, and my job before this one was on the developer advocacy team. So it's exciting to be back with you today. Happy to bring new San Diego things today.
It's great to have you back with us, Andrew.
Hi everyone, I'm Earl Duque. I am the newest developer advocate. I've been with the team for about 6 months now. I came from higher education, and it was really started from the bottom, and now we're here. Situation rising from help desk all the way to senior dev.
My name is Brad Tilton. I'm a senior developer advocate with the dev program here. I've been developing on the platform for 13 and a half years. Let's give it a half. I'm excited to be here. Chuck, to you.
Hey, my name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Advocate. A little bit of a sore throat today, so I apologize. I guess that goes right up there with the age and experience and everything else. About the same amount of time on the platform as Brad, and been with ServiceNow since mid-2010. So we have some great content for you. I think three of us are color commentary, and Andrew's got the heavy lifting today. So turn it over to you, Andrew, to tell us what you're going to be doing today.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. It's always a fun time getting to come and share new things for a new family release of ServiceNow. And in San Diego is chock full of good stuff for developers. So I'm here to talk about some of those things today. So we're going to talk about the enhancements for managing your ServiceNow development on the platform and the enhancements to improving that. So thank you for doing the screen share there for me. So we're going to be working in ServiceNow today as developers and take a look at enhancements to developing on the platform. So the first thing that I want to talk about is an enhancement to global application bundles. So if you're familiar with scopes in ServiceNow, you might be aware that there is this thing called the global scope. Within that global scope, there is the ability to create global app bundles. So what that looks like in the ServiceNow space is if you come over here to Studio and you switch your application and say create application, you'll get this option for global app bundle. This is behind a system property. I don't remember what that is off the top of my head, but now that you know that it's behind a system property, if you don't see it there, you can go look for that system property. And when I select this, so we're going to create a brand new one right now. So we're going to create this CTB.
Somebody can tell us the sys property name in the chat, I bet.
I'm sure someone can. So I'm going to create this new global app bundle. And what this has done is created a shell for me to decide what global files I'd like to work together on this application. So I'm going to treat these things as if they are a scope. And the reason to do this is so that it enables Studio and all of the capabilities from Studio, like deploying to the App Repo or source control with this global app bundle. Does that make sense? Any questions there before I show what's added from San Diego?
That's a good run through.
Awesome. So previously, the way to add files here is clicking this add existing files. And I had this interface that I could do a search for a table or name or update set and select things. And the enhancement is, so that's all existing functionality pre-San Diego. The enhancement is in the main platform UI, I've now gone to the update set table. And we've added some UI actions here on the update set table so that you can do this a little more in a bulk fashion. So as an example, if I had an incident application that I wanted to grab all of the application files for this incident application and put them together, I've already likely got a collection of update sets that already contain those files I need. And so I'll come to my local update set. I'll search for the ones I need. So let's look at ones for that I added today. So let's narrow this down to global. And I'm sure I put in some today. I don't remember which ones. Bulk Act Global. That sounds like the thing I was looking for.
That sounds right.
So if I go up here, I can see in my UI action picker that I can have a new thing called Migrate to Global Application. I can select multiple update sets here if I'd like. And when I select that, Migrate, I get this new modal that says, pick the to create a brand new global app bundle or pick from an existing one. So if I
Andrew,
want to add this,
where did you pick that? I missed that somewhere. How did that modal pop?
absolutely. Good question, Chuck. So I'll go back. So I selected
Yeah,
the
you
records I
selected it.
want. And then
Yeah.
in the top right, I went to my UI action list view picker.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it's
So,
not
which is-
create application file like it would be for a scoped app.
Right. It's migrate to global application.
Gotcha.
So this is a brand new UI action. And so now I can select my existing global app bundle that I just created, CTB global example, and I can hit migrate. What this is going to do is grab all of the entries from that update set. So all those customer update entries, and they're going to grab and claim those application files for, as you can see here, I didn't have any application files here in Studio, and now I do. So these have
Heyo.
been claimed by this global application bundle. Does that make sense?
And now that they're in Studio in this global application bundle, you could do source control, right?
Yep. So now I have access to all of the things in Studio. So I can
Yeah.
link this to source control. I can publish this to the app repo, which
Tabs.
then opens up all of those CICD APIs for me to leverage with this global app bundle.
So there was there was recently an enhancement where your update set history would show as commit history. Does that also take this into account, or is that separate?
So that's separate. So this is just the claiming process.
Okay.
So this is just associating those application files with this global app bundle. So the other UI action that was added, so that was the update set level one, and that works for multiple update sets, for batches. So it's very flexible there, but you can also go directly to the customer update XML table, and you have the same UI action available there. So
Oh,
you
that's
can
why
do
I
this
didn't
on
see
the-
it. For whatever reason, your dropdown isn't showing.
Yeah, I think it may be a StreamYard thing.
Oh, my dropdown's not showing. I'm so sorry. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
I'm
that's weird.
clicking on this actions on selected rows, and it's presenting the UI action selection list, and the name of it is Migrate to Global Application.
Now we know what to look for.
So that is then present the same exact interface for those three updates as it does for the update set.
Is that enter app name field? Is that a reference or?
No, sir,
think-
that will create a brand new app. So this will create a brand new app, global app bundle.
It
So if
changes.
I wanted to say incident,
Oh, okay. Okay. So, because it says new, I didn't see new and existing for a second. Okay. But if you said existing, it must change to a
It
reference.
changes to
Yeah.
a reference.
it changes to a reference once I do that. So if I hit
Got
migrate
it.
here, this creates a new global app bundle.
Yep.
And
Yep.
existing allows
Ding,
me
ding,
to pick
ding.
from any of those existing ones I have. We may have done a demo of that in here before. Demo global app. All right. So that is the bulk add to global that was added here in San Diego. So any other questions about the, the global application bundle while we're here? I know there's always lots of interest in this because it's a relatively new thing for people to actually use. And the main reason is, like I said, allowing you to use Studio to work on those application files and then use and leverage source control and App Repo, which then unlocks all of those CICD pipeline APIs so that you can use the same mechanism for scopes as you do for global.
So the big enhancement was that it's just easier to do now, right? So you can I can select a bunch of update sets. If I've kind of governed my development really well and I have really well named update sets, or they're all associated with stories and releases, it should be really easy for me to go in there and find a good set of update sets that could then turn into an app file or into an app.
That's exactly right, Brad. So it is just lowering that bar for claiming those apps into your global app bundle. So just trying to make this easier. We've gotten feedback from customers who are trying to do this, and they said, we think you could make this a little easier. And here's our, our next pass at making this easier to claim those application files.
Nice.
Awesome. So speaking of applications and leveraging the CI/CD capabilities, one of the things that happens is if you have existing apps. So we're going to dive into some structure of how apps are stored and listed in ServiceNow here. So when you create a brand new app in a dev instance, it creates an entry into the sysapp table. And when you use update sets to promote this app between your instances, what you'll end up with is in your production instance. So let's drop over to my production instance here. You'll also have a sysapp entry for that application in your production instance. So what does that limit me from being able to do? I bet somebody on this call knows that. In the context of CI/CD stuff.
Publishing.
It doesn't limit me from publishing, but the reverse of it. It prevents me from using the app repo to deploy updates to this instance. So we were very close there. So in my production instance, if I wanted to start using the application repository to publish applications and then get those updates into my production instance, unfortunately, the sysapp record doesn't allow you to do that. So what you have to do is convert that to a sys store app entry. And that is what it is deployed from your app repo or the store. Those get stored in that table. And then that's how they get updates from the app repo, is from that table. So your sys app entries can't get updates from the app repo. So I've got a scoped app right here, this app 2.2 that's deployed in the dev mode, essentially. So it's in the sys app table. And what we've added here is, let me go ahead and switch to this scope. So previously, you'd have to contact support and tell them, hey, I'd like to switch from using update sets to manage this app to using the app repo. And I don't like calling support. Do you? I don't want to call support if I could do it myself.
I feel like
so what
everyone's
we've added
this.
is the ability to use a UI action on this record to convert it. So this isn't in a module, so you should be able to see this one, but let me blow up the text a little bit so you can actually read it. So there's a new UI action here that's called convert to update from app repo. Very descriptive name. And this is what we're looking for. So this is the newly added San Diego feature that will convert this from a sys app entry to a sys store app entry, which allows it to then consume updates from the application repository. I could run this here, and I might, but The only difference you'll see is that the table in which this app record is stored is different. Let's give it
Now,
a
if I
shot.
remember, Andrew,
Let's see how
that
fast.
you don't want to run that on dev, correct?
Then you do get to call support.
That is absolutely correct, Chuck. You definitely don't want to run this on dev because that will prevent it from being in dev mode, and you won't be able to publish to the app repo anymore.
Yeah, and
You don't want that.
You
There's
won't
a
be able
few
to make
different-
any changes on it at all.
Yeah, there's a few different things that happen when it's on store app mode where, your runtime access tracking changes and, protection policies get enforced and things like that. So
I have to
missing an
type it
underscore.
correctly. So we should be able to now find, does anybody remember what that app was called?
Yeah,
2.2.
2.2. The scope had a 2.
There we go.
Hey, it was literally
Awesome.
app 2.2.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for remembering because I didn't remember the name of the app. And app 2.2 is not a very a sticky name for me. So now this app exists in a consumable way from the app repo. So I can go to my dev instance, publish a new version to the app repo, and now retrieve that in my production instance. So there's not a lot more to do or see here. This is a fairly straightforward change. It just allows you to convert from using update sets to app repo on an individual app by app basis as you so choose. Ready for the next one or any questions on that one?
No, that's so nice to have. Everyone's had to deal with this at one point, so this is finally great. I'm sure that the support team appreciates this too.
Yeah, I like these first two, enhancements are really just like, hey, we're telling people to use app repo, source control instead of update sets. Here's some ways to make that easier.
Awesome. So the next thing I'm going to do is stop over here into Flow Designer. I love Flow Designer. I'm a big advocate of Flow Designer. It's so good. So what has been added in San Diego in this context of managing app development for us here is the ability to install from source control the very first time an app that you have in source control. So previously, to get an app installed for the first time on an instance, you would need to go into Studio and say import from source control. So let's drop into Studio and see what that looks like. So when I go to switch, I get this interface. Hopefully you can see it. And I think the instance is being a little slow for me. Import from source control. I set it up here, right? So this is a manual step, right? And we don't like manual steps when we're talking about automating the application deployment pipeline, right? So I don't want this manual step. And what we've done in San Diego is the ability to remove this manual step and automate it with an API. Right? Make sense? Let's go see it in action.
So would this mostly apply to like a test instance? Where like in dev, you're
absolutely,
you're probably gonna do it manually, but your test instance, you might want to like auto deploy that one.
Right. So if I'm creating a brand new app and connecting it to source control, that's a manual step that I have to do the first time. Once the app lives in source control, deploying it from source control to another dev instance or to a test instance can now be automated with the API. And that's the use case is I've got a pipeline set up. I've got an app loaded in dev. I hit one of those triggers for my application pipeline deployment, which says, hey, take this app with this version and deploy it to the test instance. And I don't hit a bottleneck going, oh, well, this app hasn't been installed for the first time. So therefore, I need to go do a manual step. It makes it consistent whether or not the app is installed or not already on that instance. Get it to have that app with that version from source control loaded.
As a matter
And
of practice, would you want to install to test from source control or the app repo?
that's an excellent question, Chuck. And the answer is it depends on how your pipeline is set up. So the reason to use source control as opposed to app repo for those scenarios where you want to test it in test is if your app isn't yet ready in a publishable state. So I only typically commit to the application repository when I have an app in a version that I think is production ready. It may
But you
not be.
still need to
You still
test
may
that.
have
I mean, if
testing
you're
failing.
not testing it in test as it's tested in production, you're not really testing it. Because if you're deploying it via source control to test, that's a different process. You may miss things or you get things that are not in the app repo version.
Absolutely. But as I'm developing, one of the things
Yeah.
I can do is run tests in an instance I'm not directly developing on and get feedback sooner. And I may know that I'm not production ready, but I want to get that test results back
Okay.
so that I can enhance it right then. And I don't want to use the app repo for that because I know that it's not a production ready. So it's not the universal configuration that way. That is the scenario in which you would use source control to deploy to the test instance.
Gotcha. Thanks for the clarification. Good discussion.
Certainly. So I'm going to narrow this down to the CICD application. So I told you there was an API for this, and all of the APIs in the CICD REST setup also have corresponding spoke actions and subflows. And so if you're doing any of this stuff in a ServiceNow instance, I encourage you to use the subflow as opposed to trying to use the action directly or the API directly, because the subflow is already set up to do some nice checking and housekeeping for you. So I start by looking at the subflow first.
Very nice.
And the one I want is import application from source control or install application. Let's just narrow it down to control. See if the name jumps out. Yeah. So apply changes is the one that existed previously. And this new one with San Diego is import application with repo URL. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to load this subflow now, and it takes some inputs, as you can guess. And these are very much aligned to the REST API inputs. So you can head over to developer.servicenow.com, go to the REST APIs for CICD, and check out the inputs and outputs expected for that REST API there. And so let's see us use this subflow, but we want to inspect it first. So the first thing it does is calls that action, and then it's got some logic to decide what to do. And in the case in which it's starting to do the import, it's got this other subflow that checks in on the tracker because it's, this isn't an immediate operation that's done immediately. So what happens is you tell the other instance, install this from source control, and then it gives you back an execution tracker to say, all right, I'm going to get it right on that, but I'm not done yet. Use this tracking ID to figure out when I'm done. And so that's what this subflow does, is it checks back in, and until it's complete, it will then move on, do our log, assign our outputs, and let us move forward with our pipeline. Questions before I test?
Done for me. I'm excited to see how all the stuff you get to track through it.
All right. So I've got a application that's never been loaded on this instance. Repo URL, the branch name. Oh, let's use the master branch. The instance URL. Pick one. I don't care which one it is. Dev, test, prod. I can do it on this one. I can do it on a remote one. It doesn't make any difference.
Earl.
No. So I need to provide a credential alias. So I'm going to choose pipeline admin. This is something that you are going to need, which is you need a credential on that instance that has permissions to this repo URL.
Makes
Does
sense.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all of our source control integrations need you to be able to have write access to the repository. And so it needs a credential. And so this sysid, if it's different between your instances, which it very well might be, needs to be the sysid for the remote instance. In this
How come
case,
that's not
this,
resolved
this
by the alias, though?
because that is the alias for authenticating my REST message to the instance.
Okay, not
The,
the credentials to get.
the alias is on your current instance, and that sysid is the sysid of the credential on your remote.
That's the point of aliases, is so you can have them across multiple instances and they'll still resolve. But this is not the authentication to the instance. This is the authentication to source control.
Right. So this sysid is on the remote system for this repo. And this credential alias is the connection for this instance URL.
Right.
Be right back. Submitting an idea to change the label of that field.
Yeah, I was thinking. It seems like maybe we could label that better, because I would never have figured that out.
So that's why I wanted to be very clear on what it is, because it was not super obvious to me either. But I think I called it out all the right ways. So let's
Hello, everyone from Google.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at sys app. See how many applications we have. 32 here. And then we will expect, if this works, we will have 33. I always like to know what victory looks like ahead of time. So I like to decide what it should be prior to seeing it. So we're running this subflow. It's going to return us our execution fairly soon. And there won't be much in here, because right now it should just be, importing failed. Oh no. Oh no. Let's see why we failed. Authentication. So I may have grabbed the sysid from the wrong instance. And so let's go validate that. So we'll go to our credential table. We will grab this sysid, and then we will go validate that here and see if it's different. It is not. Let's change this then. I didn't actually see which credential was bad. It was probably this one. Hopefully this one works. I've got faith that this one will work this time. No.
But even then, look at Paige pointing out, look at those sweet logs that we don't usually get to see in these kinds of situations.
So import failed. Oh no, it's the credential. So let's check this credential record. That's going to open a pop-up. Let me go directly to the table. Credential alias. And yeah, this one I think is the right one. Did I choose the wrong one? Let's check. CICD. I want this one.
Yeah, I think that's the one you chose.
What are my choices? Really would be nice if you worked. Everything else looks fine. That looks fine. This looks fine. Now I'm disappointed. Open the record. check to make sure. So I'm going to be off screen for a second. I apologize for that. That's fine. CICD, credential. No, there's no credential in here.
Oh,
Let's put a credential in here.
Yeah, that would do it.
yeah.
Should I take the screen away?
Oh, it'll be fine.
Okay.
That modal feels
I
like
mean,
we could improve it with a dynamic input. You know, when you give your instance, your target instance, that it could do some introspection and say, here are the credentials available to you, so you don't have to paste in sysids. That feels like a good place for a dynamic input.
That is an interesting place for a dynamic input. I wouldn't expect you to have to use this manual interface though, because the whole purpose of this is to have an automated pipeline instead of
Well, that's
having
true also.
a configuration stored in the pipeline. Seems reasonable.
And then how do if you're just doing it via this interface, how would you validate they have access to the credential list anyways on that instance?
All right. Hey,
So
we got into the else.
we got into the else.
Nice.
And it said the tracker is complete. So that means that if we return to our...
Good live debugging. Look at that.
that's right.
And I thought everything was going to be polished and nice today. But let's see.
Welcome to Live Coding Toolbox.
And 33, which
All right.
was what victory was. So
That is
our
right.
app was
Hey.
installed from source control. So that is the source control remote setup. Again, as a reminder, the purpose of that is to allow you to have an automated configuration in your pipeline to
That's awesome.
install an application from source control into the target instance. The use cases is your other dev instances. So if you have multiple dev instances, or your test instance if you're set up to do source control based testing in your test instance.
That's awesome. That's a lot of more being able to control a lot of delegated development, a lot of separation of development, all from one instance. That's awesome.
Any more toys?
I've got one more toy in the bag of toys today. So we are going to switch to
App 2.3.
I think we're going to switch to cookies. So our last enhancement today in Studio for managing your app development is around stashing. So you might be picking up on a theme here. We're trying to make more of these things with source control and App Repo easier to use. And the next one is stashing. So in previous versions, what happened when you stashed? So let's talk about why you stash things. So when you switch branches, so right now I'm in a branch of this application. The branch is story 00321. And if I switch branches right now, I've got some active development on this instance. And it's going to prompt me to say, would you like to stash that in-flight development? And I could say yes. And when I deployed back from the stash, what would happen is right now I've got 3 developers who had done work on this. And previously it would flatten all their work into one update set, which would make it difficult for me to understand who did what so that I can break those out again. And the enhancement here is to make that stashing, not flatten that stuff. So let's look at what I was saying, because that's some abstraction there. So if I do a commit changes, what I can see is I've got 3 update sets from different developers that have work in them.
Right.
And if I stashed this and brought it back previously, I would only have 1 update set with all of the entries in them. And what we are expecting to work today is I'm going to stash this work, and then it's going to come back and look exactly like it does right now. Does the scenario make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
another good improvement for delegated development.
So I need to cancel out the commit window. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to stash my local changes. So I could tell it to switch a branch and it would prompt me to stash my local changes, but I'm just going to invoke it directly. And I'm going to say cake is the very best comment because it is.
Yum.
And I'm going to stash these local changes.
Cookies and cake. But now, what will I do? How will I blame Brad for the rogue stash update that got into the app then?
Very, very easily. Is whoever whoever did the stashing is actually the one who is getting marked as the last person to touch those things. So let's take a look at. So our instance has been reverted. You may have noticed if you've got really sharp eyes that one of our script includes is no longer here, and some of the updates inside of those script includes is gone because that work is stashed. And I can get to that stash from this manage stash interface. So I've got this entry to say cake is the best comment. And if I open that up, this will open that stashed entry, which is sysrepo stash. And it will look very much like an update set batch right here. And that's because that's essentially what this is. So we'll see we have customer updates in our batch, and we'll have these are the 3 update sets that were placed inside of this batch. And this is what's happening to make it so that these aren't flattened, is it's storing the retrieved update sets and the entries for those retrieved update sets in this stash batch so that I can get them back. So if I say apply this back, the expectation is that it unfurls that batch, redeploys those update sets, and has those available to me to commit independently now to my source control, which is the goal. So if I hit commit changes, I'm expecting to see 3 update sets and 2 things in one thing in each of the others. You'll notice I do have my script include back that wasn't there before and the edits to those app files. So I've got 3 update sets, one with 2 entries and the other 2 with 1 each. And now I can individually choose the commits that I want with our selective commit feature. Commit CPP. Now I can commit those to source control. So that is the 4th and final feature for San Diego that I wanted to share with you today. Before I leave the ServiceNow instances screen share, is there anything that we wanted to see and dive back into question-wise before we stop the share?
I picked up one from Charn, and we've got a podcast on this tomorrow that'll be coming out. And I found out that the App Repo update process is now diff-based. So you don't have to do the entire application, upload, and then install into prod. It's going to be a much faster process. I am eagerly awaiting to update a couple of my instances to try that out.
That's a good addition. I didn't want to show that one today because it's a pretty hard setup to show before and after how an app deploys. So I would need, a pre-San Diego version of 2 instances at the very least, and post-San Diego version of 2 instances at the very least to do that comparison to show you. But that is a really good point, Chuck. Thanks for bringing it up. You may be aware that source control has been doing a diff-based for a while now, since I think Paris, and the App Repo is similarly using some diff-based logic to narrow down the things that it needs to retrieve from the app repository, which speeds up that download time and install time.
Yeah, that seems like an issue that, you don't run into until you run into it, and your apps take forever to install updates. So yeah, that's a good.
I've had simple changes take 45 minutes
Yeah.
to just install. This is ridiculous. It's getting too hard.
I had a question.
All right.
Andrew, do you know what happens? I know this was still happening in Rome. That's why. If someone creates a table as a additional update for an app, and then someone stashes that update, does it still wipe that table's data, or does it retain its? Do you know what happens at that point? Because I know the whole wiping of data on a table was fixed in an earlier release, but on stashes it was still clearing the data.
Yeah, so the stashing of the creation of a table would still destroy any data in that table, because your stash isn't storing data; it's storing the metadata about that. So just what was found in that update set. So you can inspect what's in the stash and see what would be in there. And in this case, it would just be the metadata for the definition for the table setup.
Got it.
Yeah, because you showed us, Andrew, the stash is basically just like an uncommitted update set, right? Like a retrieved
It is.
update set. So it'd be like if you created an update set in, a target instance, or created a table, then deleted it and had it in a retrieved update set in that target table.
Yes, sir. So stop the screen share, I think, at this point.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the engagement and questions. Now that we've got the screen share off and I can see your lovely faces, any last questions about managing the app development lifecycle on ServiceNow?
Nope.
No? Awesome.
Nothing here. I'm not seeing anything in
Only
the chat
compliments.
either.
Yeah.
Only
Well,
compliments.
well, thank you so much for letting me come on and show you these new features. We are continuing to improve this area. So love to hear your feedback. Feel free to reach out to me either by email or LinkedIn or Twitter. All those details are findable in the ServiceNow blog area on the developer site. I'm not very hard to find. Feel free to reach out and share your enhancements. And then definitely, if you have really good ideas, put them on the idea portal in the community, and then send that along to me.
Excellent. Couple of quick announcements. We are still rolling through the San Diego early availability content. You can tell this is a San Diego video because Andrew's going to point to the little tag above his left shoulder. And we will continue this for about another month, I think. Right, Brad?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds good.
If you want to
Into
find all
April.
the information, Earl's got it on the bottom of the screen there, devlink.sn/San Diego. That's sort of our big table of content. And we continue to build that out on a weekly basis. We've got more in there all the time. So be sure to check back, and you'll find links to things you may have missed or things you can look forward to and block them off on your schedule, whether it's Creator Toolbox or a Breakpoint podcast or live coding happy hour, a blog entry. And as if you really are unobservant and miss the crawler on the bottom of the screen, today is International Women's Day. So congratulations to, everybody who's a woman.
Check out the blog.
Yeah.
Yeah, check out the blog. There's some good stuff there, and we'll have more in the near future. So any other announcements that I've missed, Brad or Earl?
No.
The chat's mostly talking about how I need more plants in the background. Or any plant.
Thank you once again, Andrew, for joining us today. It's certainly been informative and educational and slightly entertaining as always. Everybody, take care. Be safe. We will talk to you again real soon. Bye.